And he came to visit me, and he was crying, and he was just like, "I'll visit you every day for the rest of your life in prison, but I don't want to put you in a box, you know." And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, I'm like, that's not a possibility. And then I go back to my cell, and I'm sitting around with these guys, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm like, something's wrong, you know, like something isn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't be like, this is the problem, you know.
Right.
I just knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be, but I didn't have the knowledge to change it.
We got the pleasure of going over to your business, the Summit Lounge, walked around with you.
Did you guys like it?
Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, I've been telling people about it too. So
Cool,
it's
cool.
going to be cool.
Thank you.
Amazing. We've talked about it so many times here on the pod, but just the future of the industry and how we see that the lounge is the place to be, and hopefully eventually it merges with a dispensary as well, so you can buy and then just walk over to the other side.
You're talking about like social consumption, which I thought social consumption was the future from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But it's taken a long time to get anything happening at all with social consumption. And I mean, it's still not legal throughout the country. Like, so it's still up in the air, and even a lot of places like California, which have been wreck for years, you know. So it's like the East Coast is catching up to that. So it's like we still have a huge hurdle to go over. We got the consolidation, educated consumer. You know, there's a lot into this industry.
So for the people that don't know, can you give us a little bit of the backstory of like how you started this business? Where was the first idea? What made you want to do it?
Complete accident. I had no intention of getting into cannabis. So first off, I'm in recovery. I'm sober, so I don't partake in drink, booze, alcohol, cannabis, pills, any of that stuff.
Which is
right?
It's
cool
that you're in the industry. And you know, we've talked about. I told you that Law and Pham behind the scenes over there. They don't consume either, but they're a part of the business, which is cool.
It's what I like about it is I like the people. You know what I mean? We're getting off topic, but I like the people. I like the atmosphere, man. And it's honestly like you see the way that cannabis affects people, right? Positively, right? And obviously there's a negative aspect to everything we do. Overconsumption of anything is not good, right? Whether it's soda, coffee, cheesecake, right? Like, so it's like, you know, there's always negatives, right? But the way cannabis positively impacts people is what like really sold me on it. And then you look at not only like the anecdotal studies, but a lot of the actual studies that were starting to come out at the time. So I worked, all right, so back to your question, right? So I worked for DPH. I did grant infrastructure building, right? So I administered a grant to engage disproportionately impacted communities around substance use disorder, right? Mainly youth and adolescents, right? So I'd go around Massachusetts, I'd get these kids together, they'd advise us on our programs and policies, and then would allocate funding based on their needs, right? And it was really cool. I loved it. Good time. Yeah, it's really cool.
So you've always been kind of connected to people and
Yeah. I love talking to people. I love having good conversations. I think is one of the most understated things in our society today, right? It's
communication.
Yeah, communication.
Relationships, communications are what make the world go round. But in this era of cell phones and, you know, the internet, like, people just don't focus on that. And I truly love it. Like, I'm the guy that my girlfriend, my fiance, hates it when we go into stores because I'll start talking to the clerk for hours.
Yeah.
I don't care what store it is. Yeah. We're talking about we went to Natick and they got that hot sauce store. And I'm in there talking to the guy like, oh, well, what's this one taste like? Where do you get that from? Like, how do you order this in bulk? Like, what is this? You know?
Love that story, by the way.
Yeah, she gets so awkward. It's funny.
That's hilarious.
That's
me and my partner.
Exactly.
I'm like, why are you talking to literally everyone? And they're like, I'm just making friends. And I'm like, but you're talking to everyone, and I don't want the attention.
I'm pretty quiet when it comes to that too. If it's people that I know and people that are close to me, family, friends, I open up. But to strangers, I'm not like a cold shoulder, but I'm not the first to initiate a conversation unless there's something that, we need to conversate about.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Yeah. You do a podcast. That's interesting.
I love having an opportunity to sit down and like, let's talk. That's really exciting for me. That's the
small social,
you know what I mean? The small talk. I'm
Yeah.
not good at. I just don't have like that patience for it.
Interesting. I try to look at it like it's just like going to the gym. If you don't go to the gym, you're not going to get stronger. Your muscles aren't going to get worked out. That conversation muscle, right? Where it's like, unless you're having conversations on a regular basis, you lose it, right? So it's like, I try to talk with everyone. And then at the lounge, it's just constant. You're seeing people after people after people. They all have different work. They have different passions, different dreams. And it's really talking with people and trying to figure out like what they're doing and how can I help them, but how can I be a part of it? Like if I like your energy, I want to be a part of what you're doing. I want to support you, and
I think one of the coolest things about being at the Summit Lounge with you was like people would walk in and you'd be like, hey, how's it going? And like know them by name. And I was like, oh, like for me, having done that before in my in a setting where I'm the manager, it's like you really know your business. You know the people that are coming in, the people that are spending time with you or spending money with you. So it's like you're not only trying to create something of a business, you're trying to create relationships with people.
Well, that's what life is, you know. So it's cool, right? So I did that. So I did that where we created, I think it was 6 or 7, we called it YARCAB. It's Young Adult Advisory Boards or whatever they are throughout the state. There's 6 DPH regions. I'm pretty sure this was years ago at this point. And I ended up getting in a motorcycle accident, leaving that job, I broke both my arms. It was wild.
Oh,
it was wild.
What?
Yeah, it was
you
wild.
landed like that?
No, so what happened was, I was on the Mass Pike and we were in traffic. And what's crazy is because I was reckless, right? I was 25, just getting it. I lived in Boston. I was making bank.
I could see that.
Yeah.
25 reckless.
Prime time.
So there was traffic and I took the back roads through Wayland and got on the Mass Pike. And I mean, dude, I was going fast, very fast. And I got on the Mass Pike and there was traffic and I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to lane split. I'm going to be good. I'm going to chill. And I'm in traffic and we're going around that corner by the rest area.
With the RMV?
Yeah. And Natick, Framingham, that area, right before the exit to the Natick Mall, right?
Mm-hmm. And exactly what you're talking about. You said back way Wayland. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And, I did too. I was like, I can see exactly where this guy is.
So I'm coming from Boston, and we're going around that corner, and the sun was in my eyes, and I'm like, I'm gonna get off. I'm gonna put on my sunglasses, put back on my helmet. I'm gonna take the rest area, right? We had just started moving. We were going 40 miles an hour and the sun was in my eyes. And a lady in front of me just jacked on her brakes. And so I grabbed the handlebar and I went over. And as I went over, I pretty much ripped my thumb off. And then as I hit the ground, I had my arms out this.
Fuck.
And just jacked the shoulder in. And all I can really remember, so it's crazy. I posted online, obviously. That's what you did. You posted on, you know what I mean? Yeah, I got fucked up. I got fucked up. Here we are. And so one of the girls on my Facebook was like, I saw that happen. She's like, you went over the handlebars, hit the ground, and just skidded across the Mass Pike. And then you were in the breakdown lane. And she's like, the weirdest thing, you just got up like nothing happened and proceeded to walk back across the highway, right? Because in my mind, all I can think about when it happened was I'm on the ground in the middle of the Mass Pike. I'm going to get hit by a car. I have to get back to where my motorcycle is to provide some protection.
Thank God you did, actually, because you never know.
Traffic stopped. It was crazy.
Oh, that's great. Hey, guys, before we cut back into the episode, just wanted to shout out these drinks that we're having. Eddie, what are we doing here?
So these are the High Boy tonics by Can. So big shout out to Can. I have the lemon lavender flavor. It's really, really delicious.
And I have the cranberry sage flavor. These cans are awesome. Delicious. We drank these throughout the episode. Shout out to Kyle. He owns a cannabis business, but doesn't actually consume. So we wanted to have a safe option, one that isn't so, kind
in
of in your face. So these are delicious and great. We actually picked these up at Temescal Wellness. Highly recommend, so make sure you guys check them out and enjoy the rest of the episode. There was actually an accident that happened in downtown Framingham where there was a 18-wheeler crossing and a car went underneath and beheaded the person. My cousin saw it. And my dad, around your age, actually had a motorcycle accident as well. Completely crushed his elbow.
Yeah.
And to this day, he can't even straighten his arm. They
I'm
said
so
like
lucky.
surgery, they can't fix it. It's just destroyed.
Yeah, no,
such
I
a
won't get on a
nightmare.
bike because the majority of the men in my family have gotten into motorcycle accidents.
Yeah,
Like my
me too.
grandfather, my dad, my uncles, like they all have either scars or stories. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yo.
I'd rather just not.
My
Because
uncle-
clearly it's not in my blood.
Yeah, my uncle
Just like,
was mentally
nah.
disabled for the rest of his life. I think he hit a curb and then he went headfirst into a pole.
Oh my
And he was
god.
never the same. So
Yeah.
And now my dad has a bike again. He goes out with my mom like every weekend when it's nice
Hey.
out. So it's one of those things when you love it, it's hard to give it up.
Yeah, I've ridden since, and I don't got it anymore. I'm all fucking old.
Yeah.
that's how I feel. Like, you know,
How was the PTSD when you got back on the bike again?
so it was fine when like the road was open. The second I hit traffic, dude, it was like constant, like watching the car in front of me, like
Yeah.
just like constantly, and I didn't like it. It wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy because like with motorcycles, it's like you hear these people that ride forever, and they're like, oh, it's not if, it's when, you know, like it's and then it's it's always the other car, like it's not, you know, and I was like, yeah, okay, we know, like,
Yeah.
all right, I got it, okay, and
It's too little control for me, I think. Like
we would be up in New Hampshire, and I mean 180, no shirts, no helmets, just
Yeah.
getting it.
Yeah.
And
But up there you can cruise
you
and
can
be
cruise.
chilling, hear people brake checking,
Yo.
people don't know how to drive, people on their
Yeah.
cell phones.
I mean, they're like that in New Hampshire too, but it
It's
just
just more
depends. Like
open.
exactly,
It's
just more
live,
open, yeah.
live free or die as well. Like,
Yeah.
They don't give a shit if you're doing 180 on your bike.
and you die. Yeah,
Exactly,
it's
they
like
don't
that's on
care.
you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's
how-
why it's different.
So after that, how long was your recovery?
Probably like 6 months. 6 months. I ended up losing the job. I ended up losing the apartment, the girlfriend, everything, and
Damn.
really just kind of restarted. I had to move back in with my parents. Like I physically I couldn't do anything.
Right,
Like I
right.
mean, you're 27 and your mom's wiping your ass. It's not. It's kind of humbling. It's very humbling. Yeah, because I mean, figure I had two. This
Yeah.
was locked on here, and this was in a cast, so it's like couldn't eat, couldn't shower,
Damn.
couldn't anything. It
Wow,
was
man,
rough.
what a crazy experience.
Yeah, it was. It was very humbling because it's like everyone thinks when they're that age, like nothing affects me. I got the
Bulletproof.
world.
Your sense of
Yeah,
independence
Yeah.
too, I think, is like the biggest thing. Is like,
Yeah.
damn, like I can't do that. I personally can't fucking do that for myself right now. I have no idea what it would even be like to break both my arms. Because when I fucking hurt my foot and I had a boot on and I couldn't walk for weeks, I was like, I'd rather jump off a bridge.
yeah.
Because I'd rather just like let me be in a coma and take this so that I don't have to sit here and think about how I can't do that
Yeah.
every
Yo.
day.
I've
was bad.
dislocated this kneecap twice. And like not being able to walk or move, it's horrible. It's horrible, man. So how did you get back up on your feet after such a low point?
So I got a bunch of money. There was like an insurance mess up, and I cleaned up.
Thank God for that.
Thank God for that. Yeah. So I cleaned up. So I had a bunch of money. I invested in Ethereum off of like a whim. My boy was like kind of into it, and this was when it was like $12 a coin. And so he was like, you need to get in this Ethereum. And I remember going to Coinbase, and they wouldn't let me, and I thought it was all a scam. So they wouldn't let me buy like the amount I wanted because it was a sizable amount without like verifying my bank account. And I'm like, they're trying to steal my information. And so I missed it. And then it went up to like $30 a coin. And he was like, bro, it's going. Like, you need to get in on this. And we verified the bank account. I bought a ton of money of it. And I cleaned up. I cleaned up pretty well. And I took like probably a year off, I want to say, and just like kind of hung out. I traveled a lot. I went to Colorado for like a month and a half, chilled, and then came back and was kind of like, what am I going to do next? I got jaded by the recovery industry. It's a scam. It's a scam. I'll say it. And it's sad, but it is what it is. So then I went back to school, and I was just kind of chilling, just kind of seeing what's up. I went back to school for business. I did like one semester. Like I say, I went back to school. I was kind of a placeholder, right? And then my brother opened up a cultivation in Pennsylvania, and they were looking at doing a dispensaries or retails in Ohio. And Ohio had like this like positive impact plan and all that type of stuff. So they approached me about like writing the positive impact plan. Like, how would they, if what portion of the proceeds would they give back to like recovery services, right? Because they wanted to give it back to like substance use disorder, because opium, heroin, and stuff like that are very prevalent in Ohio, right? So I kind of came up with, I didn't really like write a plan or anything like that. I kind of looked into it and I was like, all right, this is cool. And that's where I started to learn about cannabis and a lot of like, this isn't the brickweed I was smoking back in 2012. You know what I mean? This is actual a medical product. Like they're having a lot of good anecdotal studies, a lot of good stuff is coming out of it, a lot of research, right? And I was like, all right, this is kind of interesting, and so whatever, I continued to chill. And then, my brother came back from a trade show in Colorado, and we were all sitting there as a family. We have a really close family, so we went out to eat, and he was like, "Yo, I went to this private club out there, and like you literally just signed up as a member, and you could go in the back and just like smoke weed." He's like, "It was wicked dirty. Like they had dirty bongs, they had ripped leather couches, and like he's like, I wouldn't take my girl there, but like I would go there." And he's like, "Yeah, because." He went there as a tourist, and like you can't smoke in the hotel, you can't smoke in the car, you can't smoke in the there's nowhere you can really smoke. But he was able to find this private club, and for $5 signed up for a membership.
That's so true, because when you're traveling, you got a rental car, the hotel, like there's nowhere to really smoke unless it's outside or if it's freezing. Like you want somewhere to chill. That's the thing. Have a snack.
So he kind of pitched us on the idea, and we were all like, "There's no way that's legal." This was like end of 2016, beginning of 2017, like cannabis had just been legalized recreationally, and we were like, "There's no way that's legal. Like that's just not legal. Like that's insane. Like someone would have done that, right?" And my uncle owns a law firm in Boston, and so we were like, "All right, let's talk to TJ about it." So we brought it up to him, and he was like, "That's not legal. Like that's crazy. Like, that's insane." And really good lawyer, really good guy, and so he. So we were like, just look into it. You know what I mean? Just look into it. And he called us back like probably like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. And he's like, I don't know. I can't tell if it's legal or illegal. Wow. Like it's not very clear. Like there's a lot of ambiguity in the law around like private membership associations, what you can do in them. And like the cannabis laws were just being formulated. So it's kind of like, he was like, I don't really know.
Area. It's a gray area.
He's a criminal defense lawyer, so we were like, "Hey, like, if we do this, would you defend this in court? Would you like take this case and feel confident?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'd take that to trial."
That's cool.
And I'm like, "All right, so I guess we're gonna try it." And then we started the process.
That's so cool when you have an idea and just all the people around you kind of help bring it to life. Like your brother bring it up to you, your uncle in the law firm. It's just like it all just cool, perfectly comes together.
And then when we started, my mother did a lot of like the design work. My background, like with my dad's an electrician. He's owned a handyman company my entire life. He's always working. We're always doing stuff like that. So it's like, so we had all the expertise to kind of build out the space. Obviously, it's like commercial, so you had to get a lot of permits and stuff. But it was good. And then my dad did a lot of like the finances and stuff when we first. And none of us have business experience either. Like no business experience, no nothing. Like I barely graduated high school, and somehow I found myself administering a grant from SAMHSA for DPH. You know what I mean? And wow. it's And then my parents just work average middle class Americans, work regular jobs, and none of us had any business experience. We all threw in a couple thousand, and we rented the space. Trying to find a landlord was an absolute nightmare.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, you tell them, and they're like, "That's not legal."
Yeah, they're like, "No, man."
No. Yeah, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it is, and then like negotiating leases and stuff like that. I ended up taking a real estate course because I was like, I'm trying to negotiate these commercial leases, and I'm like, I have no idea what triple net is. What are we talking about? Easements? I'm like, So I took the real estate course. I never got the license. It was $375 to take the course.
Oh, that's
you get to
not
sit
bad,
in there. Yeah, you get to talk with a guy, which is mainly what you pay for, right? And anything is to talk to someone. So we did that. We found the space that we're in currently, and the landlord just wanted money. She was like, the last dude who owned it kind of screwed her. And she was like, "Oh, you guys, I don't care what you're doing here as long as you pay."
That's awesome.
And we were like, "We'll pay you 3 months up front. Like, we'll sign a year lease," because we didn't know if the city was gonna just like shut us down.
Right.
Like we had no idea. So we did that, and then we opened. We started the build out like November. We incorporated, I want to say like October. Started the build out November, and then we opened February 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, and been open since. Went through COVID. Yeah.
It's a good spot too, right in Worcester.
It's cool. It's cool.
a perfect spot.
It has a lot of downsides. You know, the city is growing, which isn't a bad thing. It's just I feel like it's a bad thing for me, right? Like it's gentrification.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say? You know,
Yeah.
I remember when we first rented that, like there was a dirt lot. My brother's car got stuck in the dirt lot behind us, and now there's the public market and a $90 million stadium. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And you're like, all right, like this isn't, you know.
I remember when they redid Kelly Square.
Yeah.
Because I
Yep.
remember like Kelly Square was you close your
crazy.
eyes. You had to just hope for the best.
Drive.
You just
drive.
go. You just hope
say a
someone
prayer.
doesn't hit you. Yeah. You just hope that
We
you don't
vape
hit
in here?
someone.
So,
Yeah,
of course.
Word.
I haven't driven through there much, so I don't have much of like a memory of that area. But when we went to visit, I was like, I can't believe this lounge is in this spot. Like it's perfect.
Well, and then the public market also wasn't there before because I used to hang out in Worcester before they started redoing everything. So like I used to go to Wings Over all the time, which is right up the road.
Yep.
Seed to Stem is right around the corner. Chemistry is right around the corner. So I had already been like familiar with that area and had already been like in that area for other reasons. So I had known like what it was like. So then when they put the Rotary in Kelly Square, I was like, okay, they finally had enough with the fucking car accidents happening in Kelly Square.
They tried to put lights in that back in like the 70s or something like that, and all the shop owners like went outside and put bags over the lights like repeatedly. It's like a big like local legend type thing. It's cool. It's cool. There's a lot of history. That's a canal district. So like there was a canal that came all the way from Providence right up to Kelly Square, like right down that road. Cool. So it's there's a lot of history down there. There's a canal under Harding Street that's still there. We go when we have like the Canal District Alliance meetings or like the city's trying to do stuff. It was a big thing with the flood zone because that's a lot where a lot of like the wastewater goes, and like when they redid the ballpark and redid like now they have all the hotel, all the condos, all that construction. It was like a big topic of debate was the canal. What they were at one point they were talking about digging it all up and making it like Providence has that canal, like the fire water thing.
Yep.
That would have been cool, but it's also like I don't know.
So what's your vision for your lounge in the future and what you're hoping to, see it come into? Because I'm assuming
it's, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of things at play. It's the cannabis space is interesting in general. It's a very interesting market. That's what drew me to it as well. When I actually started to get into it, I was like, this is really cool because private and public health consulting is very rigid, right? In the way that you think, like it's, you have these standard forms, insurance reimbursement, advocacy, filing, grants and it's stuff like that. So it's very rigid, and cannabis, I feel like is still trying to figure itself out, right?
Yeah.
Like we're still like, where are we in the market? Who's the big players? Who's going to dominate the space? What's the consumer looking for? How's the consumer evolving over time, right? And there's so much at play. So it's like, we opened in 2018, and social consumption was the first thing on the, it was in the initial licensing types. That's what we voted for. 6 years later, they're still trying to figure it out, and so it's an interesting idea. I don't act like I'm an expert on it, but I kind of am.
I mean, you own a lounge. You're pretty close.
Way more than we do.
Yeah, I mean, I
solidified
like
in
to
the
think,
business.
I got some ideas, right? But it's I think social consumption is the end of the line, right? Like it's the end of the industry, right? Like that's where it's going, and how we get there. There's a lot in between, right? And how all these factors, regulations, stakeholders, consumers, right? Like federal legalization, how it plays on the industry in Massachusetts is going to be interesting over the next 5 years, right? And I think social consumption will definitely come up. Massachusetts has overregulated everything, not just cannabis, right? I mean, you live in Massachusetts, it's one of those states, right? And then hey, there's a reason for it. We're so densely populated. There needs to be regulation. I understand that. I'm not a I am a hardcore libertarian, so I don't believe in the government at all. But you know what I mean? I understand the reason that they are there, right? And so I think it will be overregulated. I think it will be like you look at the delivery services, and I mean, they did tons of advocacy. They did tons of work. They did tons of community meetings, outreach meetings, and you talk to a delivery operator, and they're like, "This is trash. Like, we can't make a buck." You know, it's the overregulation of the industry has hindered the economic opportunity of the people that we're supposed to be giving it to, i.e., people of disproportionate impact, right? And it's just not happening, right? And I don't know why. You know, I have lots of ideas. I have lots of speculation.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
But it's like at the end of the day, it's the environment that we have to operate in, right? Yeah. So it's like, you know, on the good side for cannabis, like you're seeing the constriction of the market. So you're seeing a lot of like smaller cultivators that are producing like really craft, really quality flower, actually being able to flourish and get high dollar for that. You know, as a lot of the MSOs have realized that Massachusetts just isn't the place for them, whether it's regulatory hurdles, burden, you know, or just consumer base, like they're starting to pull out, which is really good. But it's providing opportunities for other people, right? So that's an interesting take on it. You know, consumers, right? Like the market is shifting in terms of consumers. I mean, it's like when we opened, there weren't any cannabis. There was no legal industry. There was no dispensaries. There was no cultivators. There was no nothing. You know, it was dudes that, you know, for a lack of a better word, were, you know, selling weed. They were drug dealers. Right. You know, they're in the original. I love everyone's like the original market. And I'm like, just you sold drugs. Like it is what it is. Yeah. You know, like granted, you're not selling heroin. You're selling weed, which should have never been.
We can't neglect to talk about. That's what got us here. You know. Well,
that's
like,
it's built on the backs of prisoners.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah,
and
exactly.
Which I feel like sometimes people want to brush over the fact that, you know, it was illegal at some point. Like that's what brought us here. That's an important part of the conversation.
I think we mentioned that when we talked to Christopher, because I think I mentioned like I think that with the industry growing so rapidly and so many dispensaries and cannabis brands being able to kind of like capitalize on that, it should be somewhat of their responsibility to give back to those people and to prisoners and to people who are sitting in jail because of cannabis.
Well, the fact that anyone is still in jail because of cannabis
nuts.
Is insane.
Especially, like, I understand on, you know, the federal level, it's going to take some time, but if your state legalized it, you guys should have already been working on a plan to get these people out by the time that it did become legalized and by the time that I could go to the store and buy weed. Yeah. It's not fair that I can go do that and someone's sitting in a jail cell for it.
100%. And
it's absurd.
I think you saw when the industry first like started, there were a lot of like advocacy groups and stuff like that, and they were so focused on like regulation and focused on like the industry. They shifted gears, you know, where it was like advocate to legalize and then legalize and now advocate for regulation, right? Not like, oh, we legalize, let's advocate to get everyone out of jail before we start making money, you know? And I think that when you look at like advocacy, and I have some experience with this in terms of like recovery, right? And it's like, you know, I don't think they fulfilled their purpose, right? Like they stopped half short and then they got distracted by all the shiny things, you know? And it's like that's not, you were there to legalize it so we could get people out of jail, so we could reform the laws that put these people in prison, you know, and then wave some dollar signs and everyone's like, where are we going now? You know, and I think they did a disservice to not only the industry as a whole, but to the community, to these individuals that, you know, my house was raided in 2012 for cultivation, you know. Wow. I went to jail, you know, and it's like, you know, and not only that, you know, then they come out with these programs, right? And like, I'm gonna get wild. All right.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, I want to go down that.
I'm
you getting raided and stuff.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I only seen that in movies.
It was. When the SWAT team runs up on you, you're like, yo, this is real life.
Yeah, I'm about to go watch an episode. That Kyle?
No. So it's, you know, but we created these programs out of the regulatory structure and like legalization to help these people that were disproportionately impacted, and then we put all these restrictions on them, you know. And it's like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's almost easier to just go get a regular license than to be an economic empowerment applicant. Like you could have already had your license. You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of ideas on why it doesn't work, but I'm going to shift topics 'cause I don't want to pick apart, you know.
But I mean, that's the cool part about where we are right now in the industry. We're in the early days where everyone's trying to figure it out.
Yeah. But are we? I mean, it's been an industry for 5 years, 6 years, you know? So it's like we say, you know, we're in the early days. We are in the scope of time, right? And
in the grand scheme of things, it's, you know, it's a small time, but of course, a lot more should have been done already for sure.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I feel like compared to some of the other states that legalized and went to rec and the kind of like positive outcomes they saw out of it, like we didn't necessarily see that as big or as early on as some of those states.
What other states have you observed that have kind of done it the right way this whole time?
I give a lot of non-answers. All right, you're going to see that, right? So there's pros and cons to everything, right? Like you look at Maine and their caregiver program, right? Where it's like $1,800 a state resident, you can become a caregiver. You can grow up to 500 square feet. You can have a storefront. You can have a delivery license. You can it's amazing,
dope.
right? $1,800. That's it. And you can have a cultivation where you're.
That's why it's so cheap up in Maine.
Whoa.
That makes sense now. Like why
you're legally able to sell that product to other medical patients, right? Or other caregivers, right? So. But
$1,800 and you can set that up?
$1,800 and that's it. There's virtually no oversight. It's a little, in my opinion, it's underregulated, which is going far for me. But it's definitely like there's no testing requirements. No testing requirements. Like, what are we talking about here? Yeah, you know what I mean? Stuff like that where it's like that's what legalization is good for, right? To protect the consumer.
Right, that's like one of the first things that people think about when you start to regulate is, okay, now I
know what I'm getting.
Now I know what I'm getting and it's safe.
On the hindsight, right, you get a state like Massachusetts where the testing requirements are so stringent, you have to test, you know, in I don't know what they call them. They call them like, it's like a pack, right? So it's like up to 10 pounds. So every 10 pounds has to get tested. And the amount of testing and the testing required, it's like $500-$600 for every test. So you got to figure, you grow 100 pounds, you're talking thousands in just testing, right? Wow. So it's like that balance between regulation and the free market, right? And then you go back to Massachusetts where it's so restrictive and so highly regulated, you know, you're talking $500,000 to open a grow before you even start the build out, right? Wow. And then you go to a place like Maine where it's like $500,000, I can have the fucking Taj Mahal, you know, like, right? So but in that same sentence, right, Maine, it's so cheap and so accessible. I think they have 3,000 or it was like 2,700 last time I looked caregivers in the state, right? So it's like, it's a competitive market. Like if you're not growing fire, right, like you're out of business, you know, and you look at price per pound, you know, so it's like Maine right now, wholesale, like anywhere from 1,800 to 500. Right, you look at Massachusetts, you're talking 21. If you know, like this, it protects regulation protects the free market, but there's a point where it hinders the free market. Of course, right?
Yeah. So the overregulation's kind of stopping those other things.
Yeah, so you can't say it's one state doing it better than the other, you know, because it's unique to the population sect, right? When you look at Maine, like their culture is, you know, farming, you know, backwoods, right? Like, stuff like that.
Culturally rich.
Yeah, where Massachusetts is more biotech, business, you know, densely populated, right? We have a whole different set of values and culture than Maine does, right? So it would make sense that our regulations look very different, right? And when you get like when you take the federal piece out of the conversation, right? It's the same that like Denver's regulations look very different from California, or Oregon's look very different from New Jersey, right? Like, because there's different populations, there's different people, there's different stakeholders, there's different, you know, which
is kind of cool too, because you can see all the different models and the approaches and you know, how the legal system has either hindered them or helped them thrive in all these different markets, which is pretty cool. I went to Houston, Texas for my honeymoon. Okay. And cannabis isn't fully legalized there, but Delta 8 is. So we actually went to this cafe where there was like a dispensary and you could buy pre-rolled, you could buy a glass and everything. Yeah. And then to your right was a cafe infused empanadas, which are like beef patties, infused donuts, like all that stuff, lattes, and it was incredible. Have you had the opportunity to go to other lounges or?
No, I don't get out much. I'm gonna be honest. When I travel for fun. I go to Tennessee a lot. Cannabis isn't legal there. I
Tennessee, Nashville.
No, Eastern,
okay,
Chattanooga, Knoxville, Sparta, Pikesville.
I lived in Atlanta, and the Chattanooga sign, I would see it every single day.
Bro, people don't know. So I used to we were sponsored. Sponsored. I don't know. My boy was dating this girl from Sperry. We got a bunch of free gear to go cliff jumping and take pictures and then send them to Sperry, right? So it was cool.
That's
and Tennessee has so many waterfalls, and you wouldn't even realize it. They call it like the Grand Canyon of the South. They actually have the tallest waterfall on the East Coast in Fall Creek Falls, Tennessee. Yeah, it's
Why didn't I know that when I went there? What the hell?
Nobody knows it. It's crazy. It's so much fun. It's beautiful. Me and my girl just went there 5 months ago. Yeah, I go there at least once a year. I love it. I hands down love it. I was gonna buy land there before COVID, but we ended up opening a grow in Maine, so that was sidetracked my personal plans, but whatever. But yeah, no, Tennessee, I could see. I would live there.
I just heard about a woman's car got raided. She had like X amount of pounds of marijuana.
Tennessee, it's super
in Tennessee.
illegal.
In Tennessee, and like I felt so bad because I'm like,
a half ounce is a felony.
But no, she had pounds. Like she definitely was distributing.
Remember those like Cops episode where they have it like in the side panels, like in the fucking foam of the car.
She's like a middle-aged lady trying to make some fucking money in Tennessee. Like leave her alone, dude.
Yeah.
It's like the kid who got busted with like fucking pounds and pounds and pounds of mushrooms. He was growing them and had a whole thing. And I'm like, yo, I'd rather him have fucking mushrooms than fentanyl. I'd rather it be mushrooms than fake Adderall pills. Like, fuck out of here.
Well, who's the biggest drug deal? The pharmacies.
Yep.
Those motherfuckers,
yo,
bro.
look at
They're
Purdue,
the real,
bro.
Oh my god.
Who went
Those
to
are the
jail
real
for that?
criminals.
You know what I mean? Who went to
Nobody.
jail for that?
Deadass,
Nobody.
though.
Big Pharma's different.
No, deadass,
That's the
because-
real
Yeah.
drug industry.
That's a real deal.
How many adults do you know right now? You maybe not you personally, but I've known a lot of adults in my life who are like, yeah, I was on Ritalin as a kid. Yeah, I was on Adderall as a kid.
Hell yeah.
And I'm like,
Everybody.
I take Adderall as an adult. I can't imagine taking that shit as a child.
Oh,
A
all the
child?
time.
Almost everybody I
I
knew.
started it in 5th grade.
Yeah, see,
Jeez, bro.
and Ritalin is no bueno. They came
it's
out
a
with
speed,
studies
it's an
saying,
amphetamine.
saying it's like not good for your health.
I hate pills. I hate pills. I have
yeah.
someone close to my family who's been taking it their whole life because they have to at this point. Because when you're on it that long, you're completely dependent on it. You get off of it, you're a different person.
Yeah. Well, we're stuck.
Sucks.
We're stuck in a culture too where it's like we want that instant gratification. Why would I work out? Why would I meditate? Why would I practice mindfulness? Why would I pray? Why would I focus on my spiritual life, right? When I can just take a pill.
Right.
You know, like why
all
would-
the commercials on TV are say, hey, take this pill. The side effect is going to kill you. It's gonna-
That's the
those
craziest
those
thing.
commercials-
but don't
are like-
work out. Don't eat better. Don't, you know.
It's
Side effects might
crazy.
include more depression, suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Like,
Yo,
the
you
fuck?
look at like, you yeah, we're not
Yeah,
gonna
or
go
get
there,
a
but
commercial,
yeah.
go to the gym, drink some water, get some sunlight. You know what I mean? You don't need
No,
to just
we can't
rely
bottle
on your
that. We
vitamin
can't package
pills.
that to
Exactly.
everyone, you know?
If you can't sell it, you know what I mean?
And it requires work. It requires practice. I went to the gym. I go to the gym every other day. I
Which is-
meditate
but-
regularly.
Which is also
Journaling.
a thing about the culture that needs to be pushed. Like people need to be more disciplined. That needs to be more of the conversation. Pushing people to say, hey, yeah, this might be more steps, but this is better for you. But instead, of course, it's all about, making money and selling products.
I think the easiest way to tell the difference between the culture of now and like culture, I think when we were younger or like in the early 90s, I was just watching like this old Christmas special, the Peanuts Christmas special or something like that. Put it on. But it's like a recording of live TV. So all of the old commercials that were going on at that time play while you're watching this thing. And it's like all of these commercials are so like wholesome and they're not in your face. They're like telling you a story of something that would naturally happen versus buy this is this price, this is on sale, this is what everyone else is doing. And it's just like commercials now are literally just subliminally throwing messages in your face at all times. It's like, nah, just give me a fucking story of what's going on. The hell?
It's
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like you look at, like there's always I'm very like right of center, and my fiance is very left of center, right? And we always get in these arguments about like capitalism versus, communism or Marxism, and it's in like, like the critiques that he had about capitalism were very valid, right? But it's like, it's still, it's still lifted more people out of poverty than any other system in the world. So it's like, do we accept the downfalls? No, but we have to appreciate the good as well, So it's like, capitalism provides economic opportunity for the many. Sure, there are people that can take advantage of that system. And I think the great thing about our time and where we're at is that we can have these conversations openly because of that capitalist society, right? And looking forward to like the younger generation and stuff like that. Our parents, those TV ads were wholesome and they were great and they instilled values, but they were propaganda, and now with like the advent of technology and stuff like this, we can sit around and here's here's multiple people that have consumed cannabis, maybe taken other things, and we're perfectly normal individuals, so we can really break through that programming and really have a real honest conversation about like what we want out of our society,
right? Yeah, it's just, I guess it's, what you choose to focus on. We're, our families, her family came from Brazil, my parents from Colombia, they came here in their 20s and, and took advantage of capitalism and the opportunity that was here to, build a life for us and our family. And eventually all of our aunts came and they had kids
the American dream.
The American dream, exactly.
Completely changed our lives.
The American dream. That's exactly what they're chasing.
Which is incredible. And that opportunity is there for you if you choose to take it.
Yeah.
But
we don't want to overshadow all the negative aspects of it either, because that conversation, that's what's meant to be had in this free society, right?
Yeah.
That is the American dream, that we can have these conversations and shape our society, right? And it's
And although that opportunity is there too, I think the other side of the coin is being careful. Especially, I feel like I'm always reminding myself that, although there's this opportunity here for financial growth, I, as a human being, don't like to operate thinking about finances first, and that being the driving force of everything that I do.
Yeah.
And because of capitalism, that can turn out to be the thing that drives you. It's just money all the time. It's just about money. It's just about money.
I think
because you get to think like that here.
100%,
so that's like that's the side of the coin where you can make great opportunity because of that. Or it can be the one focus and it destroys your life because it's all that you think about. You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about your health. You're not thinking about
we've destroyed the values that the country was founded on, right? And like I could go on this rant for hours, and I don't want to take up the whole podcast with it, but it's like
do as you please.
Yeah, we've destroyed those values, right? Like we've destroyed the
values.
church, the family, like the community, right? Like we've isolated everyone, right? And now we all think everyone's the enemy, but we're not, right? We're all striving for the same thing: happiness, healthiness. Like we want the same things. It's just we have a different vision of how to get there.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what we're allowed to do in our society is have those conversations and really decide, like, hey, this is what we want, And it's interesting stuff.
Especially getting to choose what state you live in too. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the other thing I tell everyone. I brought up the grow earlier, and it's like COVID happened. Whether I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole yet, but it's Massachusetts very restrictive, right? They told me and my parents that our businesses weren't worthy of staying open. Wow. You know what I mean? And that's like, hey, like
What the fuck? You're killing us.
Yeah, like I put my life into this, and now you're saying that I'm not worthy of staying. I'm not essential, right? Like this is essential to me. This is how I pay my bills.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then you look at doing something that is essential, and it was all these high ticket items. Like I couldn't open a dispensary. We looked at opening a cultivation, right? Because it's like, what do you do when you have no money? You sell weed, and like I'm not a criminal today, so it's like I have to do it legally, right? And and we looked at Mass, and it wasn't feasible. And then we looked at Maine, and everyone wants to complain, but the reality is, I drove 4 hours twice a week, to have another business and provide for my family while shit was tough.
Good for you, absolutely. And people do what you have to do.
I tell people all the time, I'm like, you don't like where you're at? Fucking move,
Absolutely.
And it's like I don't like certain things about Massachusetts, and I don't see myself And me and my fiance have this conversation. We don't see ourselves here long term. Like, I don't want to raise my kids in Worcester. I don't want to raise my kids even in Massachusetts, right? This is so.
I wrestle with that a lot too. I lived in Atlanta and I moved 2 years before COVID. So when COVID hit, I experienced a completely different life down there. I mean, in the South, it was not what people were talking about up here.
I've
My
realized
wife
that
now,
recently.
but my girlfriend, she was still up here, my whole family, and everyone's like, you can't go out. And everyone's got masks. Like, you know, I remember my wife saying like, oh, I want to go get Starbucks. And the line would be like 2 miles long because the streets are empty and people are just trying to grab something. But in the South, man, it was like
it's
normal.
Disturbing to me at the rate at which our society forgot our values, right? That was the scariest. I moved to Maine. I was like, we're leaving. We're done. We have to get the parachute packed. Like, it's time to go, you know? And we moved to Maine. We bought it. Me and my brother started the business. We bought a house. We started farming. We have pigs.
Good
we have
for
chickens.
you. Think about
you know?
what would have happened if you didn't do that and you stayed here.
That's the
Your
other
life
thing.
could be
And not even
completely
that,
different
you know,
right now.
God forbid that it went in that direction where a lot of people thought it was going. And
You
I'm
didn't
up
have
in,
anything,
I'm up in Maine chilling on my farm with my guns. Like, you know what I mean?
So
Like,
how soon did you make that decision into COVID? So what, like February, right, was when everyone kind of lockdown started?
March.
Middle March. That was when the mall closed.
Yeah, we were having, whatever, right? I watch a lot of stuff online. So we were pretty plugged in, and me and my brothers and my family were having that conversation probably like end of April. And then it all happened in March, right? March, April. So yeah, probably like beginning of March. And then we were up in Maine by that October.
Nice.
And and built out the whole facility and everything and really got like it going and ready to leave because I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not participating in this. And it became, you know, for someone like me, like it became very difficult to just live life down here, you know, where it's you know, so it was an area of contention. And me and my fiance, we made it through it. And it was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
It was just very different, I think, everywhere outside of Mass. Like, because when during COVID, I was working in the mall and I was still very like interconnected with the district. So we had stores in Mass, New Hampshire, and Maine, at the time. Yeah. So, and Vermont. So like, it was interesting to see everything else play out in all of the other states, and Mass was the last one. So New Hampshire opened its doors 2 weeks before Massachusetts did. Wow. And Massachusetts took a massive hit in terms of consumers because they all just crossed the border. Yeah. It was super easy, especially for me. Like where I was working Peabody. So you just go to Rockingham or you just go to fucking, I forget what the tiny ass mall is called. But either way, like Rockingham or Nashua, it's right there. It's the same thing that happened with vapes. Mass ban vapes. Okay, we'll just go across the fucking border.
Go once a month. I go down to Connecticut. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing. It's like they're just. It's silly stuff like that pisses me off because it's like, okay, I get what you guys were doing with the vapes, but now you've banned it for all of the adults that were not smoking cigarettes, which has been your agenda, and you know, because they're all $12 now. Like,
we could get into such a large conversation about how we utilize laws in modern day society, right? Like, are we using laws to protect the consumer and protect the communities, or are we using laws to implement morals that someone has said is right for all of us? You know,
right.
Where someone was like, hey, I don't like vaping, and we're going to come up with a reason that it's bad for you. Cigarettes have been legal forever. Alcohol has been legal forever. Are we going to ban those? No, because you're a consenting adult. And you have bodily autonomy. You should have bodily autonomy to do what you want to do, you know? And it's like, how do we, you know, so it's like you look at stuff like that and you're just like, who's this really benefiting and who's it really hurting, you know? And not even hurting, it's like, who's taking away my choice as an educated adult consumer? You're saying that the government can think better and live my life better than I can? That does, I don't think so. Yeah. You know what I mean? But here we are, right? Yeah. So it's, you know, it's
you're not the only one either. Like I think that point of view is so interesting because I've met several people in my life that have like that are like that and they think like that. Like and I find it so fascinating to listen to that point of view because the more that I listen to you, the more that I'm like, you're fucking right. Well, you're so fucking right. Like, why do you need to be in my freaking business? Why do you need to be in my life? Like, for what does why does the government have any sort of say?
Well, where's that line? Where's that line? Right? Man. Like, where's that line?
Absolutely everything.
It's
everything.
crazy.
I just got married, and when you know what I mean, like
Marriage
right there,
license.
But
the government's completely involved.
back to that duality, right? Where it's like, yeah, like, do I think big corporations should be dumping toxic waste into the rivers? Like, no, the government should probably
Yeah.
stop that. You know what I mean? Like, do I think someone should be able to just roll up in your house and take whatever you want? Like, no, I think the
course
government, so it's like, where's
To
that
an extent,
line
yeah.
where we say like, hey, I trust the government to regulate, I trust the government to do these things, but this is mine, and how we have that conversation. And I think it starts, it's a personal responsibility, right? Where it's like, we have a duty to have those tough conversations, even in hindsight of the political shaming, right? Of the difficult conversations that we don't always want to have, and through modern media, like, we can get these ideas out in an educated, concise way, right? Where people are like, yeah, you're right. Like, that doesn't really make any sense, and like you said, the majority of people agree with that stuff,
Which is one of the reasons why I love podcasts, and I got into podcasts at first, is because, depending on your lifestyle and who you live with and how many people you see on a day-to-day basis, and especially when I started picking up podcasts, I was very isolated. I was, living alone basically, and wouldn't see much people. I had a routine that kept me inside and working from home.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity to hear conversations and hear thoughts being shared and people communicating different ideas. And it was just so cool to feel like, oh man, I can be a part of a genuine conversation and just kind of be on the outside and learning and listening. And there's so much you can just pick up from people. Even if it's not information, it's body language and just ideas that are being shared. And that's one of the main reasons I got into doing podcasts, is to be able to have these conversations with people. And when I got into cannabis, as soon as I first used it the first time, I was with my girlfriend at the time, and my first reaction was I just became super fluid. I felt like the thoughts that I had were just kind of coming out, the feelings that I had, the things that I wanted to say. A lot of the walls that I had that I didn't even realize I had were just breaking down. I was like, man, I'm always working on breaking down my walls, but this just completely released it without that extra effort that I'm always striving for every day. And because of that, it just inspired me to get more involved in the cannabis industry. And, a lot of the relationships we've grown, and getting on this podcast and having people like you who are involved in the industry, even if you're not a consumer, being able to have a platform where people like me who see it as such a positive thing, like you said in the beginning, get to go to a place like that and share it and find like-minded people. And, even if you're not looking for it for the community, just that release on your own to be able to go somewhere and,
Well, I think it's like you. That's a really beautiful story, by the way. It's nice, that, because that's the truth. Like,
absolutely,
who hasn't smoked weed and sat in the car at 1 a.m. and had that deep conversation, and like that's
what I started happening with myself. Like, I felt like, I'm someone that's pretty internal and always, talking to myself and stuff like that. But that created that deeper connection where I could really start to analyze, like, oh man,
you started being less critical on yourself.
It gave me that freedom from that.
It completely gets rid of my fear of rejection. So it made it easier for me to like do my job before, to like talk to people. It's like I could just hit my pen and be like, all right, exhale, I'm chilling. I don't care if you say no to me. I'm just gonna continue to sell to you. I'm just gonna keep talking to you until you're done.
and for the last 3 years, I've been live streaming on my channel, 4 or 5 times a week. Wow. 6-8 hours a time, sometimes 3 hours at a time. But I've done 24-hour streams, and I'm not the most social person in the world. But it gives me that ability to go to that place, because sometimes I want to be social, but I just who I am, and like doesn't come out the way I want it to come out. And it just gave me that freedom. So being able to go online and to talk to people and game and share, and it just gave me such a beautiful release to be able to create community. And much like you being involved in the community, that's what, started me on this journey too, wanting to be more connected to people, find like-minded people,
I think that's
grow together.
The goal of society is to connect with our fellows,
Yes,
right? Like, that's why we're here, right? Like, it's like, and it's muddied by all these different things, and you talk about like the internal monologue, but there's also like the societal stuff that just tells us, for the last 50 80 years, we're wrong for wanting something that makes us feel good, right? We're wrong for wanting to express these ideas and feelings that we've had. You know, we feel judged. We get put all this stuff on us that society is putting on us. When you break down those barriers, right, you become your authentic self, and that's what people want to see.
Yeah,
you know,
authenticity.
Yeah,
just
that's
real
you know,
people, no imitation, just completely authentic.
Oh my God, it's
the most beautiful part about people.
It really is, you know, and it's for me, you know, when I first consumed cannabis, it was like I was always the child that was like stuck in my head, like you were talking about. When I'm talking with someone, I'm not talking to them to hear them. I'm talking to figure out how I can get them to like me, you know, because for some reason I just never felt whole, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like the second I started smoking and drinking, you know, I wasn't thinking about any of that stuff anymore. I was able to just be, you know, and it's that experience, right? That I think that a lot of people gain from doing, you know, substances, right?
So how do you feel like you've been able to continue that personal growth without using at this point?
Yeah,
How do you feel like you
spiritually working out, you know, I journal,
That's awesome.
meditate, you know, counseling. I go to counseling, you know,
awesome.
me and COVID led to a lot of problems between me and my fiance. Very different opinions on a lot of things, you know, and
It's like my parents were like that all throughout COVID.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And it's like, you know, my family's very unified around our beliefs, you know, which is great, but that's not the case with everyone. And that's a horrible situation to be in, you know, and so we started going to counseling and really talking about, you know, this stuff. And so I think personal growth, you know, it's like, how do you grow, right? Like, I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts. I listen to YouTube. I listen to audiobooks, right? Like, personal growth it takes so many different forms. And, you know, and it's like, you know, I think, you know, being an addict alcoholic, obviously I know I can never use a substance again. Right. But like, you know, there's still something alluring. There's a lot of research coming out about like psychedelics and mushrooms and DMT and ayahuasca and these, you know, because in where I say this all the time, we're a spiritual being having a human experience, right?
Yeah.
And how do we get closer to that authentic self, that spiritual being, right? And I personally like anything that gets me closer to that, right?
Yeah.
Any, you know, so it's like, hey, like I can't sit here and be like, I'll never take mushrooms, right? Because I'm not in a point in my life where I would consider it, right? But let's say, you know, everything works out magically. I sell the lounge in 5 years for a couple $1 million and I don't have to work and I'm sitting around doing nothing, you know, and for me, that's the worst case scenario, right? Because I want to be doing something. I want to be contributing. I want to be, you know, so it's like, would I take, you know, have a psychedelic experience to get closer to like, you know, have some clarity, have some, you know, vision, you know, like, and I don't know, but it's like, that's what we should be striving for. You know, personal growth is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. I think that you're striving for that. And I think it's important to understand that people have seasons and sometimes that thing that you need to take you to that place of your personal growth is different for everyone. And that's the important thing, I think, is not to judge what you're using or what it is that's the medium that's helping you get to where you want to be. You know, at one point in your life, it was those things.
100%.
And then you evolved and found things that helped take you to a place, you know, that you wanted to steer towards.
100%.
And the important thing is that you're doing something in pursuit of your personal growth.
I agree.
And that's the beautiful thing about cannabis that it does for me. For other people, it might be that. For other people, it might be that. And I think that's the beautiful part about life that we've been talking about is to embrace each and everyone's individual
unique
growth
journey.
And as long as people are in pursuit of that, that's the important thing. You know, when you find someone who's stuck and they're not in that pursuit, I think that's where it's important to help. What they choose to get them out of there is up to them. And I'm not trying to influence them to, you know, smoke or drink you know, go to church. It's like,
I'm saying figure out for yourself.
Find your personal
Find your
growth.
thing,
Yeah, and then don't judge people. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I was gonna say I think like the growth, like the self growth in recovery, because I've had a few friends that have talked to me about them being in the recovery process. Like, when you have a point in your life where that substance isn't helping you grow anymore, that's when you break away. So I think in terms of that question, for certain people who are in recovery, that's when their self-growth really starts to happen. Is like the substance could have started out as a growth process and then it turns into something where it's not helping you grow anymore. So you have to break away from that. So like the growth process 100%. For him was completely different after recovery, because now you're discovering a completely new side of yourself. So
like I said, seasons, we go through different seasons.
100%.
I think the growth is going to be there all the time, and I think that in certain instances the substances can help. But I think that in terms of like where do you go with self growth after you're done with substance, it's just beginning for them on a different level now.
I think we get stuck in this idea of self, right? Like I am this way, I like these things, this is who I am, and the rest of the world should accept that, right? And they should think the same way I do, which just isn't the case, and it makes no sense, right? Like I think about myself, right? Like I'm here because I own the Summit Lounge, right? But like, that's not who I am. That's not what I am, right? Like I'm a person in recovery, right? That's not who I am. That's not what I am. And having that experience, right? Where it's like, I've shifted many different seasons, right? Like you were saying, where it's like, I was a drug addict. I was a criminal, right? Now I'm a person in recovery. I'm an advocate. I'm a recovery coach, right? I'm all these different things throughout our lives. And we don't appreciate that like you're a sum of all your parts, not one individual part, right?
And you aren't your worst.
That's the other thing too. No.
The worst points of your life don't define who you are.
No, they don't have to. They don't have to. And the best parts of your life don't, the flip side to that once again is the best parts of your life don't define who you are, right? Like, so it's like,
and the best parts of your life usually come from the worst moments of your life, right? That's where you grow from. You get to reset and completely grow again.
Rainbow comes from the storm.
Well, you can't have happiness without knowing sadness.
Exactly.
Because if everything was happy, you'd have no concept.
Which is like such an interesting cycle in life. Like once I start to feel that things are kind of shifting like that for me emotionally and starting to see like, okay, things are getting a little bit grim. I'm like, well, cool. Now I know that the other side is coming soon. Yeah. Because once you start going into that, darkness or whatever it may be, that light is right on the other side. So it's almost like encouraging. I think how many times throughout our life do we get to that place and we're like, we come out and it's just everything that we wanted to happen ends up happening.
Yeah. Well, how old are you guys? Just out of
28.
28?
30.
30. All right. So we're all like around the same age. 34. Well, I turned 34 in April. But so it's like, I think as you get older too, you appreciate that more. Where it's like when I was 20, like I stubbed my toe and the world's ending. Like it's never going to get better. It's never, it's crazy. Right. And now I can appreciate that all these negative things or these positive things are just a fleeting moment in this grander scheme, this grander experience of life. Right. And I was just listening to Gary Vee on the way here.
Shout out Gary V.
Bro, shout out. I've been listening to a lot of his content right now. You guys can smoke it.
Gary V is great. Like, no worries. We got this infused seltzer. Actually, we picked it up from Temescal Wellness. It's
Temescal's fire. Bro, they got good people.
They got great people.
Yeah, they got
we
great
had Chris
people.
on. And Chris is amazing.
Chris is fire. Ray, amazing.
Ray, amazing.
Solid.
Who connected us, actually. I spoke to them last night, and they give you another shout out.
Yeah, I fuck with people. All right, so the industry is so huge. There's so many different brands, and people are switching all the time. I don't care what brand you work for. I don't care about the brand. I care about the people. Temescal has some amazing people right now. And that's how I look at the industry, right? And it's
for me, it's people and energy. I'm a big energy person.
I like that.
Big energy person. I'm not into like the stereotypical things that come with like energy and like rocks and like how you sense that kind of thing. Yeah. But I think everybody has their aura. Yeah. And it's just something that you kind of assess and you move forward with people that reciprocate that energy. That brings positivity, inspiration, and
100%.
You can tell when people are way closed off. Yeah, genuine or like closed off or open. Like when you can tell in their body language, the way they're communicating with you, whether or not like they're interested. Yeah. So, and it's cool, I think, to start a conversation with someone who's kind of closed off and then watch them open up as the conversation continues to progress. Like, I think that's one of my favorite parts about building that relationship with people is like sometimes that first impression of someone might not be the right one. So getting to continue to get to know the person and then watch their walls just kind of fall down as the conversation keeps going is really cool feeling.
It is. It's beautiful.
And it's been great on this podcast with the few guests that we've had. It's we've been able to jump into some really, really great conversations.
I believe it. Yeah. No, it's podcasts are so cool. cool. Like I love listening to them. The problem is I feel like you hear the same people over and over again because the algorithms feed you what you want to hear, right? Or what, or
Fucking
not even what you
algorithm,
want to
man.
hear, what you're currently listening to, right? Like I said, I brought up Gary Vee, and it's like I watched like two. So full disclosure, we've been thinking about starting a podcast at the lounge, right? My
Okay.
boy.
Well, let us know if you need any help with that behind the scenes.
Well, so my best friend has been pushing me for years to just start like recording shit because he's like, oh, you live this really cool life. Like you should just like record it and put it out there. And I'm like, all right, bro, calm down. So whatever. But we you know, so it's like I've been watching a lot of Gary Vee, right? And because he does a lot on like content and stuff like that. And our social media game at the lounge I'm horrible at social media, absolutely atrocious. We haven't posted in like 4 weeks. Yeah, it's
Well,
bad.
social media is
tricky.
tough. You know,
tricky.
like I do it because I have to,
Same
but
here.
I never want to be on social. Like,
And I'm on it all the time. And I'm like, why is this happening?
that's why one of
Yeah.
the first things I did was get an editor, and he posts everything
I
for me.
love
He
it.
completely manages all the socials because I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it. I don't want any alerts. I don't want
None
to
of
pretend
that.
it's not even there. I just
Yeah.
want to get here, do my part,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then have
Sad.
someone that helps me on the back end because
I'm-
it gets loud and it's just.
I'm so green still. I'm like, look at all the notifications.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just buzzing
Oh
all day.
yeah, no, it
I
doesn't buzz
loved it at
anymore, but
first.
it just like throws up in my home screen. I'm like, oh, look at all these.
It's a
Yeah,
huge
it's
rush at first, but then it just
It gets draining.
it gets loud and draining and distracting, and you start focusing on the wrong things. And you know, when I come on here, my goal is just to have a great time, and
like that.
I don't want it
Yeah.
to be about anything else. If I'm thinking about the clip, I'm thinking about I should say this because it's gonna get this views. It's like all of that
Yeah,
just dilutes this experience, and I don't want to stay away from that. So,
No,
but
yeah.
shout out social media. It's a
Shout
great
out social
tool that
media. It's
gives
a
us
great tool.
opportunity.
Yeah. You got to
Tool, that's
curate it.
exactly-
I feel like
it's tool.
it's all about curating the algorithm, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like I found myself downvoting a lot more stuff than like I'm upvoting, right? And I think that really helps with the algorithm, right? When I'm like watching a lot of business stuff, I'm constantly like upvoting it, liking it. You know what I mean? And then when I'm starting to watch like the prank videos and shit, and I'm just like, this is just soul sucking. This is
Yeah.
just time I'm wasting. I'm just throwing it away, you know? And it's like, big one for me is the pickup lines where the dudes go around the campus and try to
Yeah.
pick up the girls. I'll watch those for hours and I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, this is horrible. Why do I care? Like, I'm like, what is happening here?
Dude, they're
You
just-
know, and the
Sometimes-
Those
algorithm.
videos, man, they get you.
Bro, they
get
just
you.
feed them to you.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
so
man, especially
crazy.
now that the microphones are picking up what we're saying. It's like
At all
we
times.
talked about it so many fucking
At all
times on this
times.
pod,
we,
but like
we-
I just started golfing, and like a day later, didn't even search
Yo.
any golf things on my phone. TikTok, golf,
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 yeah.
YouTube,
Yeah.
golf. I'm like, what the fuck? I haven't searched anything,
Yep.
nothing.
I just had a conversation around you. But the other part is like if you have other devices too, right? Because everything's interconnected. So if you have like a Google Hub, then your phone's connected to your Google because the accounts are the same. If you have an Alexa, it's again connected, so it's the same. So whatever you say around Alexa,
Yep.
Google, or your phone, all three of them are listening to you to pick up whatever you're talking about.
I used to be I'm very conspiratorial, right? And I used to be the guy like, I'm not putting this on my phone. I'm not
Yeah.
like the location, never turn on the location.
They know everything
I gotta-
regardless of what we do now.
I got a new phone and I'm like, I just gave up the fight. I'm like, if they're coming, they're coming. You know what I mean? It's like,
I
it
think
don't
that's
matter.
where we're at. They know everything.
It
at
is
this
what
point,
it is.
no matter what
you
you
know?
do.
And it's,
To feed into the conspiracy theory in
about
both of us, I think it was 23andMe just got hacked. Hundreds of thousands
my
of
girl
people's
did that.
information
I was so pissed when she did it.
at risk.
I'm sorry, 23andMe.
The
23
DNA.
the DNA, like let me spit in this little cup, send it to you so you can tell me what I am.
And it got
I
hacked.
It got
still,
hacked.
So someone has everyone's DNA.
So
we're
bro,
fucked,
it's
man.
even
We're
deeper
fucked.
when you get into like those apps that like the dog face ones or like
Oh, yeah,
the
the
turn
facial-
your
the-
face.
the facial recognition
it's
ones.
all getting your face.
Yep,
It's,
yep.
it's
Have you seen Black Mirror?
so I don't watch Black Mirror.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Well-
I watched a couple of them. It's a great. I've heard wonderful things.
Yeah.
Not my.
feel
No
like
No
it's
worries,
serious,
no worries.
yeah.
But
They're
it
kind of
just
far-fetched.
gets into like, licensing, facial recognition, and actors, selling their likeness rather than actually acting. So now AI can construct them out of their likeness and create
There's-
and insert them into any movie, any plot, anything they want to do.
There's this.
Musicians too.
We watch a lot of Hulu, and there's this ad on there with Johnny Depp, and I'm like, I just saw him in the Amber Heard thing. Like, he don't look like that. Like,
Yeah.
that ain't him. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, like, something's going on, and it looks all AI generated. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's where we're going as society. And
Yeah.
the larger ramifications of that stuff, we have
Crazy.
we
man.
have
Thankfully,
no
there's a
idea.
strike right now,
We-
and they're trying to clean that all up because Disney earlier this year got caught for having extras that were all AI generated. I
love it.
And like, you
Yeah,
can't
but
do that.
but you look at, like, you're talking about a strike, and you're just like, AI, it's not going to strike. Like,
Yeah.
you're out of a
Yeah.
job. You know what I mean? And that's the real interesting thing with like AI and technology, I think. And this is back to those conversations that we're going to have, right? Because we're, you know, it's our time,
Yes.
right? And it's like, you're like, I thought AI was gonna like take away, like, they're gonna take our factory jobs and
yeah.
the truckers.
They're gonna be the truck
you know?
drivers.
It's all digital content,
Yep.
writers, you know,
Yep.
admin jobs. Like, that's what they're taking, you know. And I think it has to do with like the robotics. Like, the robotics aren't there to take those physical labor jobs yet. Like, we haven't figured out that component, but the algorithms, the computing power, like that stuff is light years ahead of the human brain. And
I think your point on like what it's gonna do to society thing is really big because like when I was younger, we didn't have like social media like that, right? We didn't have this thing of giving us body dysmorphia because of social media. What we had body dysmorphia over was the people in magazines, right?
Yeah.
The Photoshop of people in magazines. Now those people aren't necessarily Photoshopped anymore. They go to get Botox. They go to get all this shit done to their face.
Yo.
And for me, as a person who's just looking at these people online, I'm thinking they look like that. I'm not knowing that they have Botox. I'm not knowing any of this stuff. So if I'm looking at shit that's AI generated of a person who is perfect, imagine what that's going to do as a society to how we see ourselves, what we think we should look like,
but not
all these
even,
expectations.
and not even physically, like their lifestyles, what they're
Yeah.
doing, like
That's the other
all of
thing.
that shit is fabricated. Rented
Yep.
cars,
Yeah.
rented
Yo.
people,
Rented
rented
airplanes.
venues, rented
everything.
It's just so wild.
maybe not even their like they literally
I
were
watched-
there, woke up at 7 a.m., stood in front of a private plane,
You
took a
can-
picture. Like
You
they
can
do
rent
that
airplanes.
shit.
Oh, yeah.
Influencers
Oh, yeah.
can rent
Oh,
out
yeah.
these locations and shit.
I watched a whole video. Like, we're still talking about real people, right?
Yeah, that's
I
true.
watched a whole YouTube video about AI influencers where they create a whole person and it's all AI driven, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers.
Absolutely.
And we talk about body dysmorphia and the things that young people go through today. I don't think our brains in the evolutionary path can handle that, right? When you're talking about AI generated porn. Like,
Dude,
what are
yeah.
we like? I'm like, you can't expect, you can't
That's a good point.
even just regular, you know, stuff. We could get into a whole conversation about, you know, that, right? And it's like, that's not how people look. Like, that's not the average person. So then we're all dissatisfied in our relationships because we're seeking this idea of perfection that's just not fucking real, you know?
And it's all
like,
around us nowadays, everywhere.
and then you get into like, you know, politics, right? Like, AI generated, like, God forbid, you know, like this next election is going to be crazy
Yeah, it
because of
is.
stuff like that. We're going to quickly get to a point in the next 5 to 10 years where we won't be able to differentiate truth from reality. And that's,
I think we're already there, man.
yes, I wouldn't even.
It's like,
hard.
what is true?
It's
That's why
hard.
it's like hard to listen to anyone. And I think that's
And how do you
part of-
regulate it?
Yeah.
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 And I think that's been part of like my maturing process as well as an adult is just growing and saying like, man, I used to think everything that I believed was the truth. Now it is like,
I don't know shit.
I don't, nothing.
I can't
to me,
prove it.
nothing is
yeah,
the
if
truth.
I
can't
can't
prove
touch it,
it.
if I can't
Yeah.
sit here and talk with you and like,
That's the
it
only
ain't
truth
real.
I know. It's got to be
Yeah.
right there, tangible. I know that I'm, real and my thoughts and the people that I interact with, but that's about fucking it.
Well, like,
Yeah.
now
Everything else is fake, man. Everything.
It's like half stage. Like the videos that you see, like some of like the videos that I get sucked into doom scrolling with. It's like, oh, I see it, I laugh. I'm like, that's interesting, cool, that's funny. And then I go to the comments and everyone's like, this would be cute if it wasn't staged. This would be so great if it wasn't staged.
It's
I'm
all
like, oh,
staged. We talked about
yeah.
Dave Portnoy and like I don't know if you're into his pizza reviews and that stuff that he
Oh,
does,
yeah.
but that
Is
I
it
think that's
staged? I think it's hilarious. I think they're great.
It's so
but
funny.
is
No,
it
they're
staged?
They're hilarious. They're great. I don't know if they're staged, but we've talked about it just because of the timing. There was this one event that happened in
one
Boston where he
The
was
guy
outside,
came out and-
came
Yeah.
out,
Yeah,
and
I
started
saw a
fighting
little
with
bit of
him,
that, yeah.
and as soon as he comes out, he just delivers the best one-liners, and like the timing was perfect, and
His
it's just
t-shirt.
like
His t-shirt
But just
was funny.
imagine the business that would come to you, even if you're not liked.
Negative press.
Negative press is
yo,
good
Any
press.
press
Any
is good
press
press.
is good
Yeah,
press. Exactly.
Yeah,
So it's like,
you go viral, people are gonna go check it out regardless.
Yeah.
Imagine
you know?
if Dave Portnoy came, to the lounge and was like, "Hey, let's start a fight." And like, I don't want to do that, man. I want to be a good person. Trust me, you're gonna be flooded tomorrow. Here's cash.
I'd
Boom,
be like,
boom,
bro,
boom.
I'll punch you in the throat right now.
Let's fucking
I mean,
do it, dude.
like, what do you want?
And then
Like,
the next day that
Yeah.
people come through that don't
you
like
straight in
Dave are
your
like,
throat.
"You're a hero. We love you. You're for the culture. We're gonna be here every day."
no, I'm telling
It's
you,
nuts, man.
It's we live in an interesting time. We live
just
in a
fake.
have you guys heard of what is it the fourth before turnings, the fourth turning?
No.
Whatever it is. So it's interesting how like the cumulative knowledge of society like disappears over time, right? And
Right.
it's a really good book. It's all on like there's different generations, right? And there's like the age of prosperity, there's the age of like wisdom, there's the age of like conflict, right? And we're in the fourth right now where there's going to be a lot of conflict coming up, and each generation has their place and their time in history, right? Very interesting stuff. I could go on a fucking hour conversation about it, but they're talking about how a lot of the societal beliefs that we have from the last fourth turning, i.e. like World War I, World War II, are going to be completely broken down and reshapen over the next 25 years, right? And we're going to be the ones, our generation is meant to lead us not only through that hectic time, but then the rebuilding time afterwards because of our age. So we're about to start seeking like political appointments. We're starting our business careers.
Yeah.
We're becoming leaders, right? We're not a younger generation.
Right.
Whereas Gen Z, right, is going to be part of like the Enlightenment era, right? Where it's like people are free and they break down those societal values, right? And then we get back to the fourth turning again where it's chaos, right? And that's that's the age we're in right now, because everyone who experienced that last fourth turning is dead, right? Like my grandfather who fought in World War I, dead, right? That cumulative knowledge from that time period is gone.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. Now I
Very,
get it. Yeah.
very
It's
interesting.
The history
Very-
just continues to repeat itself in
It's
these
just
cycles.
over and over
Yeah.
again, and you can look back all the way back to like the French Revolution when these it started happening, and every like 100 years, because that's the average lifespan, every 100 years everyone with that cumulative knowledge is dead. It repeats itself, and we go into an age of like great turmoil.
Yeah.
And that's where you look at like World War III and all this stuff with China and Russia and Iran, and it's very
and
interesting.
even
Yeah.
back then it was like the inability to store information and pass information and keep those records.
we
and,
don't even know how that's going to affect all this.
and nowadays we have access to all the knowledge in the world, and I don't know if it's helping at all. It still might lead us down the same path.
That's the thing.
It's like,
But what is that is
thought knowledge was power.
That's not, but like we said, it's all fake.
Right.
So it's like
It's
we
like,
don't
what
know
is
the
the
narrative
knowledge?
that like I can talk to my grandmother about being in the Great Depression and having to, dig up fucking potatoes, right? Like that's actual like experiential knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Now where we're being fed this fake knowledge and this version of knowledge, right? Where they did it with ChatGPT, where you ask it certain conservative questions and it won't give you the same answers if you ask it like certain like liberal questions, right?
And we talked
so
about
the-
that too. Like, what is programming
Controlling.
ChatGPT? What's their
that's the
lane?
and
What are
this-
they trying to push? What narrative are they pursuing? So,
100%.
at the end of the day, when you're looking for that information too, or you're asking
in a
Siri or
very-
Alexa, like that's a cultivated experience as well.
We're in such an interesting time, and like I said, it's interesting because we are the generation that's gonna like really handle these questions. Like we're gonna have to decide whether we want to be uploaded to the Matrix or not when we die. Like that's a real decision that we're gonna have to make in 60 years when we're looking at that. Like
My
it's
mom
like-
said the craziest thing during Thanksgiving. We have this tradition where we each go around the table and just say something quickly that we're thankful for. My mom was the last person, and she goes, "I'm thankful for the Matrix." And everyone was like, "What'd you say?" I was like, "Yo, my mom is she's there."
It's so wild. She's in it.
He's connected.
Dude.
It's so
wow.
crazy.
She's like, "I love these blinders."
A rose-colored rose.
Well, that's
You know what I
the,
mean?
it's a generation. She
Yeah.
thinks it's interesting. And while we're over here, like existential threat, like
Yeah.
how do we, like Yeah.
I swear to God,
She's
she
like,
said
plug
that.
me in, send me up. See y'all later.
I was like, I can't believe my mom just said that. That's great.
I'm so
Oh,
dead.
that's so cool.
I
That's
love
cool,
The Matrix.
man.
Have you seen the
of
movies?
course. Yeah, obviously.
Fucking
It's
fantastic.
fantastic.
So, what would you rather be, connected to the Matrix or live outside the Matrix,
I
where
don't-
you're
I don't know.
insanely poor and
I
have
go back and
nothing
forth.
in war?
You know, I get worried about who would control it, but also I'm like, I'd love spider arms. You know, like I'm like, oh, that would be so cool.
Well,
but
I mean,
you think about like, so my brothers both went to WPI, and this was probably 7 years ago, maybe something like that, and they were already printing 3D human body parts, right, out of skin cells. Like they take the skin cells, they do the skin grafts, they put it in a 3D printer, layer and layer on top of it, and they can print lungs, hearts, shit like that. So that's where society is.
Blew
So
my mind.
wait, what'd you just say?
You just blew my mind.
I'm telling you right now, look it up. It's fucking
Bam.
crazy. So you take a 3D printer, you know how they do skin grafts,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Take a 3D printer, and they have special 3D printers where they are able to create a 3D model of an organ
3D
and
model of an
print it on top of each other so it becomes layered into that organ. Where I mean, and this was in its infancy back then, so I don't even know where it is nowadays. But you look at 10, 15 years from now, you go in for a heart transplant, and they're like, "Oh, do you want like the real thing?
No,
Do you
they're gonna
want
show you a model.
Or do
Hey,
you want the
which one do you want?
You know, and then
Yeah.
eventually we'll get to the point where there's no more real things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, hey, you're going in for a heart transplant. Here's a 3D printed model. We'll have you out tomorrow.
Yeah, and you get to choose your different price. You want the one
That's
with the gold
insane.
trim or the red trim.
look at the
you can
Neuralink.
customize it. I was just about to say
bro,
Neuralink.
stuff
Same
like
thing.
that.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
can I-
And they're doing human testing starting, I think, the beginning of next year.
No thanks.
Is it going to be able to improve my eyesight, my hearing, my computing power,
Memory.
Like,
Everything.
this is, you know,
But
and
I'm
this,
not a robot. I'm a human.
Right. But if you have crazy deficiencies, like you're blind, even Elon was saying it could fix vision.
And
Like,
here's-
and it's not going to start with us who don't need those things, right? It starts with all the people that are paraplegics, blind, deaf,
We're
dying
even-
from some type of disease.
we're even able to have this conversation because we understand what it means to be human, right? Imagine your kids. They're going to be the Neuralink will already be out. All these things will already be out. They'll be born with it, right? And the reality with like the Neuralink too is like, if you want to compete on a competitive level in this capitalist society, you're going to need that. Imagine being a human going up against AI
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
You can't do it. You can't do it. Now imagine 20 years from now,
Have to
our
keep
children just being born, they're going to be born with Neuralinks just to be able to go to school, you
Yeah.
know? And that's the scary thing. And we can have this
Mm-hmm.
conversation now because we understand what it's like to not have it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Our kids will never get to have this.
That's so crazy.
we talk about it. this
So
all the time.
wild,
crazy.
right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Insane, man.
crazy.
It's absolutely crazy.
It is.
And we talk
It
about the
is.
Matrix, you think about the Terminator, like all
Yeah.
those movies, and those are all projections of what
Yeah.
they felt the future would end up being, and we're right there exactly where everyone thought we
Yeah.
would be, because that's that kind of subconscious drive into destiny itself.
Well, that's the the whole argument too is like, were we created by AI to recreate AI?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, what's the and it's I go back. I go down some crazy rabbit holes. All right,
We
and
love
like
That's why we called it Down the Rabbit Hole. 'Cause that's what we love doing, dude.
You like that
Just
plug?
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, so you get like I've been down like civilizations, right? And like you start looking into stuff like Göbekli Tepe, Guam and
I'm into that.
like Atlantis, right?
Yep.
And
Yes.
and you think like we think like people are like, oh, plastic is never degrades. Like it's not. 450 years plastic degrades. 450 years. The last ice age was 12,000 years ago. When you start thinking like that, we could have had a civilization just as advanced as we are today, and it would all be gone, and we would never even know. And then you go into like Earth crust displacement, where the crust is constantly going. We could have the Earth is 4 billion. What is it? 4 billion years old.
Yeah.
We could have had civilization after civilization after
Just
civilization, and
continue
So-
to get destroyed and
We would-
rebuild and
So there's-
destroyed and rebuild.
There's
get
a
into-
theory that we, I think, are the sixth advanced civilization to inhabit Earth. And the theory is just that. It's that we get to a point where we are advanced enough and then something wipes us out and we restart.
Or
we
we
don't
wipe
have
each other out.
Or we wipe each other out and then we don't have a history of that advancement.
Yeah, they
So-
call them like great filters, where it's like there's like great filters where it's like a society. either achieves like the intergalacticness or it just filters out where there's like asteroids. It's just the probability that we won't succeed is just greater than it is. And there just has to be enough. And too, it's like, what'd your great grandfather do for work? You know, so you look at 2 generations from now, if society ceased to exist, 2 generations from now would lose all that human. We wouldn't have any electricians, none of that. You know what I mean? And can you adequately transfer that knowledge onto your kids in a post-apocalyptic society? You can, you know? So it's like,
and you only live long enough to be able to pass those things down.
So
and
it's
even if you
just-
have children that grow up to be that age where you can pass that knowledge,
You just
and if there's
constantly
famine
goes
and
over and
disease,
over.
then everyone dies and you can't pass it along, and then you just fucking keep resetting and you make zero progress.
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
we're all the way back to fucking square one
in
again.
fucking in 100 years, you know, if people are looking at the pyramids and they're like, you know, 12,000 years from now, they're like, pyramid, what? How did they build these?
Dude.
And they think there's a lot of credence to the idea of like you brought up energies and stuff like that. And you look at like ancient monks and like all, you know, there's different tracks to society and the way that we evolved. And we evolved based on like this industrialization, fossil fuels, stuff like that track, right? But there's all different types of tracks where it's like, we're wondering how they moved those blocks in the pyramids. But like I watched this video where they were talking about like each different type of block is made out of a different element, right? Like one's granite, one's sandstone, right?
Yeah.
And when they rub together in certain conditions, they produce a vibration that produces energy. And we're just sitting here like, but like we can't build that today. So how did they build it, right?
I
so
saw
it's
something on that too.
That's
It's
my
really
favorite
interesting.
theory of the
There's-
pyramids.
There's also a thing, I think they just recently found a tomb that's like in the center. There's a specific way to get into the tomb. And in the center, I think it's something that goes straight up or it's an
the
opening
power?
or something.
Are there
For
a
the
power?
energy, I think it's like to gather the energy from the sun to transfer to the stones to create heat. And that's why it's insulated on
and
the
the pyramids
inside,
are
all
the
the
tip
shit.
of the pyramids we only know are there because they're in a dry, arid condition, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the only reason. You look up Guam and Penyang in Indonesia. They thought it was a mountain. It's the largest step pyramid in the world, and it dates back 20,000 years. It's insane when you actually start doing research on it. I've gone down the fucking rabbit hole on that one.
Yes.
Like it's huge. They thought it was a mountain, and it has
That just happened in. We were just
It's-
talking about that. Was that in Alaska a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, where the ice started to melt and they noticed that there was a pyramid there? We talked about.
Oh, I know what
doubt
you're
it.
talking about.
I
know
wouldn't
what you're
doubt
talking
it.
There's a picture of it somewhere, fam.
I wouldn't doubt it at all. And you start to think
South America, too,
You know,
there's
when we
pyramids
talk about
there.
like ice age, global warming, right? Like all these things. Do I think we're heating up the planet? Yes. Carbon emissions heat up the planet. We know that CO2 heats up reflects the sun. Whatever, right? Like there's science behind it. The world is naturally heating, right?
Yes.
Are we speeding it up? Yes. Okay. It is what it is,
Yeah.
right? But through these natural heating and cooling periods, right? Like you have to think like the world was covered in ice 12,000 years ago, right? That means all the water was sucked up into the ice caps. So the oceans were I read something where it was like 400 miles of land was exposed by the oceans. Where are all our major cities? They're on the coast. Where were all their major cities? On the coast. Ice caps melt, they flood it, all the shit's gone.
Destroyed.
It's crazy. Like if you, I mean, obviously you listen to Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
And like, what's the dude with the oh my God, that guy, Grant,
Hancock.
my guy. Yes.
He's great. I've listened to his pods a few times. Those are my favorite episodes. for Joe.
Ancient Apocalypse
Yep.
on Netflix, bro.
Yep, I'm
it's
into that, dude.
So
Heavy.
into it.
It's fascinating. History is fascinating, and especially when you have people questioning
Things that have been
what
around.
history was and how we perceive it and
Well,
how
that's
much
the
of it's
thing.
actually true.
Well, so much of academia, I feel like, is ego, right? Where
Yes.
it's like, I have these degrees, listen to me, right? And don't question anything else. You know what I mean?
And
And you're
it's all
kind
the-
of just like, wait a second here.
And
You
it's
know?
all the winner's perspective.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's a whole nother. That's
The
a,
winners
yeah.
write history. The losers are dead and not doing
That's
shit.
it, bro.
So
Yeah,
how
that's
many
why-
stories have been lost?
Well, that's why we got the story on Christopher Columbus.
Yep.
And why, just a few years ago, everyone was like, fuck Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
Why have you been lying to us?
Yeah.
And then we were all like, you were lying to us? You put that shit in our fucking school books? You were
Dude.
lying at that
Once
level? And then
internet-
that's when the fucking
Yeah.
thing broke, like the whole fucking, the
look.
bubble.
Once the internet
glasses
came,
off.
everyone was like, holy shit, everything's a
Hold on.
fucking lie.
But then we go back to what's real, what isn't,
Exactly.
you know,
And
is
then nothing's
that
real.
story about Christopher Columbus real, or is the one that they fed us
probably
recently
not.
real? You know what I mean?
No,
like,
exactly.
I didn't know Christopher Columbus. I didn't, you know
And
what
they
I mean?
didn't
Like,
either. No
bro,
one that's alive knows.
that's
So
the
everyone's just passing
thing.
down the fucking paper. Like, yeah, pass the note,
Yo,
pass the note.
It's yeah, we're in an interesting time. And weed's cool. Right, man. It's cool, man, because it's like you know, it ties into like this time that we're in, where it's like, you know, we're doing research, you know, cannabis, we're rolling back all the prohibition, we're, you know, psychedelics, we're rolling back all that, you know, like we're in a time when we're not only questioning the narrative that we've been fed, but we're experiencing things for ourselves and developing our own ideas, you know, and that's what's beautiful about this.
That's
time,
the best
really.
part.
It's the best part, you know, where it's, you know, we can get on a podcast and talk about our experiences with cannabis. We can get on a podcast and talk about our experiences with mushrooms while they're still illegal, you know? And it's like we can get those experiences out there, which then shapes the cumulative narrative around these substances. And it's interesting stuff. It is.
Sharing from our perspectives, you know, not just having an educator teach what they've been told to teach, you know, people educating each other with their own personal experiences
100%.
is the best way to learn.
100%.
Learning from each other.
I think that's what makes podcasts so special, is like a lot of us grew up in this time where school was really like put down our throats and shoved down our throats, and you had to have this discipline to go to school, and you just had to fucking do it. So a lot of us don't learn in that sense of like, let me sit down in this rigid construct to learn. Having a podcast where you're literally just listening to people have a conversation, it's way easier to absorb the information, remember it, and keep it and retain it than it is if I were like listening to a lecture or listening to like an informational, educational video. Like, no, I just get to listen to these people like actually talk about it like human beings. So it resonates with me.
It resonates, yeah.
It's somewhat, I don't want to say shameful because I'm proud of it, but like I feel like a lot of the things that I've been able to grasp informationally in my education has been outside of school and listening to podcasts and, you know, watching my own things and stuff like that. Cause I just, you know, with school, I struggled. I didn't do well. You know, I left after my first third semester of college, went to community college. You know, that was more of a pursuit of music and other things that I was doing. But, you know, I never felt like I really learned or was grasping much during those times. And it wasn't until I hit my 20s where I just went on a educational journey on my own to, you know, figure out what this world is. That's when like I actually started grasping life and the things around me.
Yeah, I think school teaches you things, but school doesn't teach you to think critically. I think that's the part that we lack a lot in the
You
new
only get that
generation.
from experience.
And I feel
Exactly.
like that's the way I learned too, and that's the person that I am. That's why school like
That's how
never
many people
clicked
are.
for me.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
like
no.
it's just not working for me.
Yeah, it's I mean, I had a very interesting school. I went to Juvey when I was in my junior year. I went for like a year, and then I got out and was restricted to. Only way I graduated high school was I got released, and I was deemed a threat to school activities. So they were gonna kick me out, and the special needs teacher was like, "No, he can sit in this class with us." And I hung out with all the severely disabled kids, and they used to bring my classwork down there, and I used to do that. And so I had a very different schooling experience than most people. And then like college has always just been like a placeholder for me. Like if I'm not doing anything, why not go back to college? You know, like,
Right.
Just something to do.
yeah.
Interesting. Would you mind sharing any information about that? And
Yeah, no, I mean, no, I'm an open book. You can ask anything you want. So I was, so I mean, I broke into a house, stole a bunch of guns. I went to juvie. I was a juvenile at the time, so I got locked up for maybe like 6 months to a year. And then I got released, went to a program, did absolutely nothing, and kept living my life. I graduated high school. I'm gonna go through my drunk log right now.
No, you don't have to. It's just, it's just cool to reflect and see like where you've come from and who you are now.
I have mixed emotions about it, right? Because like we said, the different seasons, right? And it's like I used to get a lot of value from that as a person. Like I am this, I am tough. You know, I did these things, right? And it's like the older I get, I'm not ashamed of them, but I appreciate that that's not who I am, and I don't like glorifying them. You know, like that's how I feel. But like you said, it's important to share, right? That I mean, I've been been arrested maybe 6 times. I've been in jail. I did probably like 6 to 8 months in juvie. I did maybe a year to year and a half in Worcester House. I've been indicted. Been charged with everything from assault to heroin to firearms to,
But I think the most interesting part of you is that you're saying all of that to me, and I hear you, and I see that you've experienced that, but the person that's sitting in front of me is like, it's so different, and like you advocate for so many things, and I think that's for me is like, I'm never gonna see you for what you've done or like any of that. It's just more of like, wow, you're such a big advocate. Like to see someone come out on the other side and really want to help others is like, I think that's my favorite part.
It's inspiring and it adds so much value to our conversation too, to know that we're here in this day and time and those are the experiences that you've been through. And it's
that's why I share it mostly. I feel like
I'm so glad you're sharing. And not because of, the people that are watching or anything like that necessarily, but it's just great to know that the people that are watching are seeing an authentic conversation.
It's interesting because like in the I was talking with someone at the at the lounge the other night, and he had done 5 years in the feds, and it's interesting when you're talking to someone who's never been there and then talking to someone who has, right? And those conversations vary, right? And it's like you can't really we have this idea about jail that we're fed to in the movies and this and that. And granted, it's not fun, but where I was at in life at that time, it was easier to go to jail than to be on the streets. When I was released, it was just chaos, and I can look back at that and say, like, be honest that I was an animal. I should not have been on the streets. You know what I mean? Like I should have been in jail. And I thank God today that I did go to jail, that I was locked up, because chances are I would have hurt someone and I would have hurt myself. And I did hurt a lot of people, and it's but it's like too, like you can't fully appreciate till you're like sitting in that cell and you're literally there and you're like, everything's gone. I'm not getting up and going to work tomorrow. I'm not like, you can't even make a phone call. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, you get your one phone call. You get one phone call. That's it. You know what I mean? And then you actually get incarcerated and you go to these prisons and you get, we were locked in Worcester House. We were locked in 21 hours a day. Wow. I'm locked in a cell smaller than this for 21 hours a day with another guy in a toilet. You know what I mean? It's like, and you can't appreciate that, and it's like, I think young people get caught up with media and stuff like that. Like I remember listening to like Lil Wayne and I remember watching the movie Blow, right? And I'm like,
love that movie.
Love that movie. Great movie, hands down. Not talking shit about it, but it's like I thought that's what the life was. Like I thought that's what it was, and it's not. You know what I mean? It's a shit sheet and sandals in a cell. It's literally going in and out of jail so many times that you're sitting there and you're like, this is it. This is what I got. I'm 21 years old. I'm in Worcester House for the 3rd time that year. And I'm sitting there with a bunch of guys that have done a million years state time, have absolutely nothing and no one. And I'm sitting there and I'm contemplating, like, that's my life. That's what I got to look forward to. I'm not going to be Pablo Escobar sitting on the beach sniffing cocaine and drinking margaritas. Like it's a box or a cell, and that's the reality of that lifestyle,
Do you feel like, as you were in there and having those experiences, you're constantly thinking about those things? You're constantly reflecting, or?
I never had a moment of clarity till I did, right? I was, so I got, last time I got arrested, I was out on bail. I was on an ankle monitor, and I started using again, and it's too. It's like you don't plan on it, right? Because I got released, and I was like, I remember my best friend. Now it's funny. So my best friend actually was locked up with me, right? And we became really close in there, and then we both got released, lost contact, and this and that. And so I was leaving, and we were like, I'm not gonna drink, I'm not gonna smoke, like definitely not doing heroin again, like it's not gonna happen. And he says that he was in the yard when I came back, and he's like, what happened? And I'm like, I got high. And it was so funny. But so I was, I got released and I started drinking, and I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic, bro. I have a problem with heroin. You know what I mean? Like I can drink, right? Like I'm 21 at the point, and I'm like, everyone drinks, right? Like everyone drinks, right? Like I can drink, like that's
Right.
normal, right? And what I failed to realize was it's not normal to start drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning because like you have nothing going on because you're on house arrest, right? Like I didn't realize that wasn't normal, right? And you know, and I conned another girl, and she was picking up dope. She got arrested. They came to my house, you know, and my best friend got arrested leaving my house, and then. Sure as shit, my probation officer called me and was like, "You need to do a drug test." And I'm like, "I can't. Like, I'm not around." And she's like, "You have a GPS on your ankle. Like, you are around.
I can see you."
Yeah, just delusions, right? And I went in there, and for the first time, I was offered treatment. Didn't want any part of it. I got sent away again. I did like another 3 or 4 months on a dangerous hearing, and I went to the Salvation Army in Springfield and had no intention of getting clean and sober. I went there because everyone in lockup was like, you can go there, you can steal shit. And my plan, it was weird because this was like right around the time when like The Town came out. So everyone was talking about like bank robbing and shit. And I was like, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go on the run. I'm going to become a bank robber. Like that's the plan, right?
Wow.
And I got released to the Salvation Army, and I got put on restriction, and I was on restriction for like 3 months, and I couldn't go anywhere except for there or to 12-step meetings, right? And the dude, and I had to be chaperoned by one of the guys in the program, and this dude was mad old, right? Been in and out, and he was like, yeah. I'd been in jail for like 3 months, and then I was in this all-male program for like 3 or 4 months, right? And I'm like, yo. I need a girl. Like we gotta go to the like, and everyone was like, "There's hot girls at the meetings," and I'm like, "Let's go." And
That's the spot.
that's the spot. And this guy was like, "I'll take you to the meetings you want to go to, but you have to go to the meetings that I go to." And I went to this meeting, and it changed my life, honestly. You know, because like we're talking about that authenticness, and you're sitting there, and for the first time, like I wasn't allowed to speak, right? Because I had no experience, right? And I'm hearing these other men, right, share about how they were where I was, you know, just released, didn't have anything. My family wasn't talking to me, you know, and then they'd drive up in like a brand new Infiniti and talk about like the relationships they had with their family, and you know, and how they own their own businesses, and I was like, that's what I want, you know, like that's what I've always wanted, right? And I'm like,
wow. So you're like, I can be that.
I can do that. I can see it like there, and I believed them that they were where I was, you know, and I was like, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? I just asked, how'd you do it? And they told me how they did it. I did it, and I gave myself a year. I said, I'm gonna do this 100% for a year. If I don't like it, I'll start getting high again. Just that simple, you know. And it'll be 11 years in
Jeez,
April.
man, that's
yeah.
unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
it's
that's
cool,
like,
man.
That's
awesome.
That's
11
so
years.
beautiful.
Cool, yeah.
Awesome.
That's so beautiful, and that just kind of encompasses everything we've talked about,
Yeah.
like sharing and the human connection and seeing someone else talk about the place that you've been in, those shoes that you've had.
Bro, and then you
Different
get to
connection.
see like they're different. You know what I mean? And it's like
I can be that. I can do that.
I can do
That's
that,
so
you
powerful.
know, and then they lay out this simple plan, right? Where it's just like this simple, like you got to do these things every day. You got to focus on this, and this is how you do it. And then you do it, and you get the results.
then
And
they
you're just
add,
like,
yeah, it's like those little steps that just add up as you
Yeah,
go. The
bro,
consistency
it's-
it does it by its own.
yeah.
Discipline. When we talk about discipline, that's usually the word that has come up. Like when I worked at the Peabody Mall, the manager for the store right next to me, his name's Johnny. Shout out, my dude.
Shout out.
He was in recovery as well,
Okay.
and but he was in a similar boat where like he wanted to do more. He wanted to be able to help others that were in recovery. So he became a recovery coach for I think like a sober house or something like
I
that.
love
So he
that,
can help.
yeah.
Yeah, so he can help. He's super dope. But he is the reason why I learned so much about being in recovery and just like the process and some of the things that they do. Like he used to go and meet up with people, with some other guys at like a coffee shop, and they'd get a bunch of donuts, and he was telling me like you basically substitute it. So instead of like going and doing heroin, you go and you eat a bunch of donuts. You get a sugar high, and like just certain things, little things that they have to do in order to keep themselves disciplined, their bodies disciplined. It's interesting because you see this person and you're like, you were that person? Like how
The rap sheet is you wouldn't believe it. People don't believe it. You know what I mean? I have everything from threat to commit a felony murder, assault with a deadly weapon, possession of firearms, heroin, Yeah, that's very interesting.
To
I mean, yeah, no, I'm not that person anymore.
to
I'm
overcome
not
what
that
you've
person.
overcome is incredibly powerful, man.
The scary part too is like being this person now and thinking that there's people out there like that. Like that's the scary part where it's like I've become the person that's like, yo, like my kid starts hanging, yo, like, you know what I mean? Like those people need to be locked up. Like we
Right.
can't, and
Yeah.
it's complete mind fuck, honestly. It really
Completely
is.
going to the other side, like 180 degrees.
180
exactly.
degrees. Yeah.
Man, so it's funny because before you went on with that story, I was going to ask you, like, you kind of alluded to after the accident, things started kind of shaping up for you, but I was wondering, like, what was that moment of clarity? And
Moment of clarity.
Would you say it was that meeting? That was like
Yeah,
the
no,
switch.
it was over time. It was definitely over time.
But that
it
was like
wasn't-
the inception of the clarity.
The clarity was before that when I was in jail, right? When I realized something was wrong, right? My dad came to visit me, and this is kind of an emotional story. But my dad came to visit me. My dad's a big guy. He's an electrician. You know what I mean? Solid dude, right? And
Blue collar guy.
blue collar guy, normal guy, right? And he came to visit me, and he was crying, and he was just like, I don't, I'll visit you every day for the rest of your life in prison, but I don't want to put you in a box, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm like, that's not a possibility. And then I go back to my cell, and I'm sitting around with these guys, and I'm 21 years old, and I'm like, something's wrong, like something isn't right. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't be like, this is the problem.
Right.
I just knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be, but I didn't have the knowledge to change it. Right.
Wow.
And then like over time, I got released, went to the Salvation Army, started getting involved. You start picking up these things, and now you're like, I can put my finger on it. You know what I mean? It's that idea that like I'm less than. It's that idea that I can't connect with people without substances, right? Someone said it the best. I'm an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I'm always better than you, but I'm just never good enough, And then like, and that like really resonated, right? Because I'm always judging everyone, trying to figure out how I can get over on them, how I can make them like me, And I never really thought about like who I was or what I wanted, and it was just little shit over time that like really just put all the pieces together, and I love my life now.
Shout out your dad and
Beast.
the people that love
Yeah.
you and come to see you and tell
Over
you
here,
the
like
hard
my
truth.
eyes are watering. I can't imagine your dad like.
It was
I'll come
tough.
to see you every day. Oh, parents love
yeah.
is different, dude.
Different.
Parents love is so different.
It is, and it's like, and two, it's like, we get into this conversation about, like society and like disproportionately impacted people and stuff. And it's like, I look at my life and I'm like, and I'm grateful for the support system I have, but not everyone has that, and it's like, how do you, how can you provide that to other people without having them having it naturally? Like you talk about your mother, like stuff like that, like those support systems where I neglect my privilege a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right. And I like to think like I did it, hard work, blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's like, no, like we're inherently privileged because we live in America. We have these values, we have these things, right? And how do we tap into that as a society, And it's
that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing. I feel like that's a conversation that happens a lot, and I felt like especially in Latin culture, it's very prominent to share with your family and to grow together and to help each other. And I would say growing up in American culture, that wasn't something that was applauded or people would really see as the lifestyle that they would have. Like it's about separating from your parents and creating a life on your own and doing everything by yourself. And that's what being a human being and contributing to to this.
Wow.
And I think people have to have more appreciation for what they have, and at the end of the day, man, this journey is about working together, and there's no reason we need to be on it alone. And you shouldn't be ashamed of help. You shouldn't be ashamed of the opportunities and the privilege that you have in whatever scenario you have, whether it's financially or family, everything that we have is privilege, whether it's both my parents being alive and people that I know that don't have that, or split families or families that don't talk to each other, or people don't have any money, or
all the problems we have in the 21st century in America, we have running water. You know what I mean?
Literally, at the very
But
base.
like what, you know what I mean?
We don't
like
go hungry.
I think about it like I drink a lot of smoothies, and I go to the store and I get pissed when they have like bananas that like aren't ripe or they're like a little bit brown. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm in New England, it's wintertime, and I'm complaining about the quality of banana, not appreciating the fact that bananas don't grow here. Like they don't grow anywhere near here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like just down to the basic level. Like, you know, there's that video where they get the kids in like third world countries to like repeat the quotes like, oh, I didn't get soy latte.
Yeah.
And you're like, yo, like that puts that shit into perspective. How grateful we should be that we're here in this moment, and like we can have these conversations and we can do things like, you know, and it's like, yeah, we're not without our problems, but you know, do the problems outweigh the benefits?
Yeah.
You know,
you just got to be aware and continuously try to balance your appreciation. You know, you can't completely neglect it and be ignorant. Right, exactly.
Any way you can, man. It's so important. It's so important.
I grew up in the church, and I started going myself when I was a young teenager, and we went on a few trips to Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And we were, you know, with like severely, you know, impoverished people. And that just gives you a whole new appreciation for what you have. And I remember loving those trips because you just come back so energized and refreshed and grateful. And that's actually, it's funny you bring up that word, because I feel like personally in my life, in this season that I'm in, I've been trying to be more aware of gratitude and trying to lead more with that in my life, because I feel like if you lose hold of that, it kind of messes up your journey. You know, gratitude is so important to have to keep you energized and
we
keep
get so
you
weighed down with all the
be
problems.
humble and appreciative of where you've been, and you know, a lot of the things that I hoped to be and dreamt of years ago is where I'm at now. And
I remember like getting released from jail, and it's like you talked about going over there and then coming back, and you're just so grateful. And it was like you'd go to jail, you'd have absolutely nothing. It would be a shithole. I remember when I was in juvie, they 5-minute shower, not even 5, it was like 3 minutes for a shower, right? And you're like, how can I wash up in 3 minutes, right? And then I remember when you got home, and like I could just sit in the shower, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so nice, you know? But then 2 months later, you forget all that, you know? And it's like, how do you keep that gratitude?
Right. How do you continuously keep up that gratitude?
Early on in recovery, they talked a lot about like gratitude lists, like waking up, doing morning meditations, all that shit, and then writing 5 things you're grateful for. I did that for years.
Yeah.
Years.
Really successful.
I might take you up on that. I might do something like that.
It takes 2 seconds. Yep. It's so easy. You just,
because the problem is
it's like affirmations too.
Yeah.
Like if you do affirmations every day, psychologically like proven.
Yeah. Well, your mind calibrates. You think about it. I watched this thing where it's like you think about it like a thermometer, right? Where you keep, you know, like it calls for it when it needs it. You tell it where to be set, and it calls for it, right? If you set it at 60, it's going to be at 60, right? If you set it with negativity, you're going to be negative, right? If you set it at positivity, your mind's constantly going to calibrate to where you want it to go. So you're driving the train, you know, and it's like you just got to remember that and not get focused on let all the negativity, all that stuff come in.
Focus on being the pilot, you know, not just being on autopilot and letting
you run your life,
your thought, you know, lead you.
Yep.
100%.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's deep shit, man. Deep shit. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Incredible. Kyle, thank you so much, man, for stopping by. This has been absolutely incredible.
This is great.
I expected one thing, but I'm just.
We didn't even really talk about weed, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's about people.
Wherever it takes us.
Wherever it takes us. And I'm just so happy that you opened up, and you know, you really made this conversation great by allowing us to talk about your life. And
I just showed up, bro,
and talk about everything that we did. So thank you so much for showing up, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I enjoy these type of things.
Absolutely,
you know, it's cool.
We definitely hope to have you again sometime, and maybe
you let me know. Yeah. You let me know.
Absolutely,
you know?
man. Thank you so much, guys, for everyone listening at home. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Check you guys later. Make sure you check out the Summit Lounge in Worcester.
Yeah, check us out.
Summit Lounge.
Cool spot.
Website, summitlounge.com.
Yeah, summitlounge.com. Underscore Instagram underscore Summit Lounge. No, the Summit Lounge underscore MA. Okay. Right. And then,
And then you'll find everything there, website, all the
website.
information.
Yeah, we got the little link tree.
Yeah, and you guys do like different kind of themed events throughout the week,
God,
right? So like one nights you have.
We had a DJ last night. We do bingo, comedy shows, drag shows, game nights, networking events, industry nights, college nights. We do we're a private membership association. We're organized for the social and intellectual enrichment of our membership, right? So whether it's a grow class, whether it's networking, you know, we have these social events to bring people together.
Yeah, and I saw that you guys have like smoothies and shakes and coffee
milkshakes.
And tea, milkshakes.
We don't do smoothies. I wish we did. It's the
Milkshakes,
fruit.
though? Milkshakes are dope.
Milkshakes are on point.
Love milkshakes.
are fire.
Milkshakes are
Yep.
nice
You got a little
Shout out
snacks.
Alicia Catella. She
Hey.
kills it. She's my girl. She does everything at the lounge that I don't do.
What's her name?
Alicia.
Shout out Alicia.
Yep.
Awesome, man.
She's a
Thank you
beast.
so much, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Love you guys.
She was standing in the doorway. Whoa.